And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first, indirectly and directly through Israel, help establish Hamas. Then we have an election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, you know, we were allied with Osama bin Laden, and we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest of Israel either. The war propaganda that is liable to lead us into the sixth war, and I worry about that position. Iran is a threat because they have some militants there, but believe me, they're all around the world, and they're all around the world, and they're not a whole lot different than others. Iran does not have an air force that can come here. They can't even make enough gasoline for themselves. And here we are, building this case out. Please, they're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Yeah. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically contributory.
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60 seconds ago about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat Al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account, because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the Al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
But it's attacked your #1 ally and protector and sponsor, the United States of America. There is a quote-unquote war on terror being going on for 15 years.
Almost all have been men, so it's not a stretch to assume that many are fighters. We were curious if any belonged to the Al-Qaeda-affiliated rebel group Jabhat al-Nusra that now controls the other side of the border. But Dr. Hussein tells us this would be impossible.
The army here changed the policy and don't bring again fighters, only civilian people. At the first time, yes, there was fighters against us there for the revolution, but after, no fighters, only civilian people. We can see children, we can see very old people, it's not fighters.
I noticed in your statistics that 90% of the people you treat here are men. Are you sure none of them are fighters?
I don't know.
This question clearly made the doctor uncomfortable.
White helmets are Al-Qaeda. They are Al-Qaeda members, and that's proven on the net. The same members are killing or executing or celebrating over dead bodies. At the same time, they are humanitarian heroes. And now they have Oscar, as you know.
Well, the white helmets are media favourites and have been widely praised in the West for their humanitarian work in Syria's Aleppo. They recently featured too in an Oscar-winning documentary. However, the group has long been embroiled in controversy too, such as when the celebrated rescuers were caught on camera waving black flags and chanting Islamist slogans. They're accused also of lacking correct medical expertise.
Glorifying terrorists. That's what the Palestinians do, unlike the Israelis. At least that's the oft-repeated view of Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
They consider murderers to be heroes. They name public squares after them. We don't.
Really, Bibi? Really? What about the Oleh Hagadon streets that you can find in several Israeli cities? That's the name given to the group of Jewish fighters executed in the 1940s after waging a campaign of terror and violence against Arabs and the British authorities, including the murder of politicians and the bombing of a train station. All of this in the name of creating an independent state and kicking out an occupying power. Sound familiar? Members of that group included Eliyahu Hakim, who helped assassinate British Minister Lord Moyne and who today has a street named after him in Haifa. And Shlomo Ben Yosef, hanged by the British for trying to blow up a bus full of Palestinians in 1938, who has streets named after him in both Tel Aviv and Akka. Did I also mention Israel issued postage stamps bearing images of Oleh Hagadon? Well, you might say, fine, that was then, but no Israelis today would praise or glorify Israeli terrorists, would they? That's a wedding party in Jerusalem, celebrating the death of Ali Dawabsha, the toddler burned to death by Israeli settlers 5 months earlier. Celebrations that included the stabbing of pictures of baby Ali.